Welcome to the Bridgman Bootcamp 2020 recordings. Here they are free with better audio than a pirated version, trimmed of distractions, improved with extras. These videos will help you understand the books. This first lesson will show you why you may need help understanding the books. I will include only a portion of images from the books, but I will do my best to add value to them with commentary, opinions, information, insight, reviews, and resources. But I will always point you back to the source. Bridgman drew figures while teaching students how to draw figures. The books are a record of his drawings and some of his writing. They cost a little, but they're worth a lot. And this video series is free. I hope it gives you a better understanding of Bridgman and gets you into the books. Let's go.
Brisk, brave brigadiers brandished broad, bright blades.
It's time to begin. We're official. Welcome to the Bridgman Bootcamp in the historical year of 2020, 100 years after his first book was published. This is Figure Drawing Lessons from George Bridgman. I'm Marshall Vandruff, your teacher and fellow student of George Bridgman. I'm going to give you a test. How do you spell Bridgman's name? No cheating. But to make it easy, I'll give you some options. This is a test. It's a spelling test, but it's a test of your sight and your sense of whether something's working or not. Which is correct? I'll be silent. Ready? That's right. Number 4. There is no E in Bridgman. Why is it important? Because it's part of our password. And if you get it wrong, you'll be left out of our forum as karmic justice for having violated this great artist's name. Some people don't think Bridgman is a great artist. I do. Let me elaborate. People who criticize Bridgman may point to truths. Lack of refinement, lack of personality, drawing the same character over and over, not telling a story. But it's like criticizing a lion for bad penmanship. Lions don't need good penmanship. They're lions. George doesn't need a variety of character types or refined detail or storytelling. These are marvelous figures. Good enough for me. Criticisms or not, our job is to see the good of these and bring that good into what we do. But let me address one criticism, which is how incomprehensible these are. Look at that arm. I remember when I looked at this in my youth thinking, what's going on with that arm? Does that arm look weird to anyone else? It looks kind of like a kindergartner drew it with a crayon and smooshed it to not quite look like an arm. It may look like that because sometimes when someone is sure what they have to say and they're a little drunk, what they say could be misheard. But it came out. So musically, he has left out a line to show a form. But that peak right there is that ridge group of muscles. It goes from here to here. That line is, in fact, a very informed line. It just isn't that clear. There are other parts, though, that even a critic might admit that is a pretty awesome-looking leg. Look at that knee. Look at that line right there, where the rectus femoris pulls down like a strap against the quadriceps group. And this hard shading at this plane break is where the iliotibial band pulls across the vastus lateralis. Look at that tendon of an outer hamstring. There's a lot of anatomy going on in there. There is a lot of awareness of form. But there's more. I think that this picture has something that Kimon Nicolaides said was the most important thing, more important than the anatomy or the form or these beautiful bass guitar string plucks of charcoal hatch marks. The more important thing is that when he draws this body, he gets into the sensation of this body. He feels this physical pose enough to get it into these abstract scrawls on the paper. He seems to know what it would be like to be that strong and in that position. That's empathy. We will get to that. We have a session to emphasize empathy. Now, let's start with a question. Why Bridgman? People have wondered about his art apart from the demos. Bern Hogarth railed about him not having produced anything. Norman Rockwell said that he did murals. This is the only thing I could find on the internet, and I can't credit it because there was no credit in it. It looks like a cell phone photo of a beat-up print. I am so sorry for the damage. But kindred, look at that image. If you're an experienced painter, you can sense this artist's control of and wisdom in controlling those lights and darks. Not a figure drawing thing, a design and composition thing. That control of values and the ability to handle this paint. It is reminiscent to me of Howard Pyle. Look at the characters and how little he tells us about them. Nothing like what Norman Rockwell would do. These are not caricatures that are lively and exaggerated. They are as Bridgman and Pyle and N.C. Wyeth in that they are understated. So we do the imagining. As little as we see, there is a character in there. There's character design in there. These are types. People out of their element. Here's another thing. There's a good chance he didn't pose models for these. These are made up. I don't know this, but I think that he is working like Wyeth and others who assimilated types that they could paint out of their head, at least in the preliminary drawings, maybe all the way to finish. They could invent figures like that and know how to place a light source on, and so will you. Why Bridgman for 1 month? Because Bridgman, if not a great artist, was a good artist. And because his books are filled with his best. Here's the one I knew from half a century ago. When people told me how important it was, I bought 2 copies and had the print shop cut out the spine so that I'd have loose leafs. Then Sterling Publishing came out with this one, also hardback. Then this one, paperback. Then this one, hardback and paperback. And then finally, the 5th edition, the one I am recommending. One reason I'm recommending that you buy it is the ethical issue. Sterling Publishing put a lot into this, and they deserve the little bit of money they charge us to own our copies. Invest your $20. We hope that they keep reprinting it. Also, they reorganized it better than the previous ones, and I will refer to specific page numbers that would be of this book. Back to why Bridgman. In the introduction to the complete guide, Howard Simon includes the words, "These drawings, Bridgman's own creation." What does he mean? Are they completely original? They are not completely original, not by any stretch. If you know the drawing and sculpture of Rodin, you know that Bridgman is a kindred spirit. Some artists to Bridgman, like Houdon and Raphael, less kindred spirits. Michelangelo, kindred spirit. In fact, Howard Simon mentions that Bridgman, like Michelangelo, who Bridgman closely studied, does not personalize or individualize. Excuse me? Bridgman does not personalize or individualize? Correct when it comes to the characters. But when it comes to the drawing and the drawing style, Bridgman personalizes and individualizes as much as any anatomy text I know, apart from William Rimmer's, which was mid-19th century, the guy who did the Led Zeppelin mascot without knowing it. This was 100 years before Led Zeppelin. Good choice, though. I mean, by Swan Song Records as a mascot. The argument for quirk. Now, look at his work. That is not Mary Blair. It is not Mary Cassatt. It is a very personalized and individualized William Rimmer. He was a medical doctor. He drew an anatomy book, a very unique canon of proportions. What do you do with that? Here's what. Create your own canon of proportion. Why not? You're an artist. Create humans. If they're not ideal, well, they're you. You can adjust to your ideal later. You can make your canon ideal or humorous or pathetic or heroic, but it's a project. Something to do as you take this course. Whatever you do, I will warn you about William Rimmer. The book is out of print. He believed in phrenology, that the shape of a person's head revealed their moral character. It goes down a dangerous path, and I don't know much about it, but his presentation of individualized and personalized characteristics make his work idiosyncratically Rimmer. More individualized and personalized than Bridgman. Now, if you want an anatomy teacher who does not personalize or individualize, go to Paul Richet, another physician, a little later than Rimmer, with a canon of proportions. It's the late 19th century version of what in the early 21st century is now the Goldfinger book, a book worth having on your shelf and in your view, both Richet's and Goldfinger's. I have a cut-up version of this book as well, which helps because it is very text-heavy, and the plates are separate from the text page. So you have to go back and forth, or you just cut it up so you can put the text page next to the plates. Let me show you a close-up. Look at how unpretentious, how concerned with accuracy and clarity. Let me read you what Robert Beverly Hale says about these plates.
The style is deliberately subdued so that it may not prove infectious to the student. These, I feel, are matters of considerable importance. Students are deeply influenced by books on drawing, but they are seldom mature enough to judge the qualifications of the author, the accuracy of his statements, or the qualities of his style.
Here we have an old man, two old men, because all join in, telling you that the boringness of the style is a good thing. It may be the same kind of energy that a parent has when they see you falling in love with that good-looking someone, and they can see in advance how much pain that person will cause you. You can't. Yet.
The old people know that the surface can distract and even deceive.
This deliberately subdued style of Paul Richet is to not teach you style. It's to keep your attention on anatomy. And when he gives you 3 orthographic positions of the body, they are carefully measured to be as accurate as they can possibly be. But you can read book reviews on my website. You know that, marshallart.com. Back to the reason I'm showing you this. This is where you go for precision and truth on the average. Accuracy. Do we go to Bridgman for accuracy? We do not, because that is not going to give us accuracy. That is not going to give us an averaged out, precise anatomical proportion. Even when he gives us orthographic views, they are not accurate. It's effortlessly drawn, remarkably expressive drawing, effective with weight and forces. It has some great ideas for how to understand the figure, but it's incomprehensible to beginners. not appealing to some people, including some good moral people. It's very individual. His drawings are as recognizable as Tom Waits' voice. Bridgman's characters are anything but normal human beings. They are his specific vision of the figure, Bridgman types. Back to why Bridgman? We don't want to imitate his types. We want to imitate his willingness to create types. One of the best reasons to study Bridgman is what he said on page 11. Let's see what he says about this book. From the Introduction to Bridgman's Life Drawing, the small green book from 1924. This is the story of the blocked human form, where the bending, twisting, or turning of volume gives the sensation of movement held together by rhythm. Its purpose is to awaken the sense of research and analysis of the hidden structure beneath. It is hoped that the ideas conveyed in the drawing and text of this book may enable the reader to carry on to independent and better ideas. We're going to spend a little time with this. This is the story of the blocked human form. Bend, twist, and turn. Those are terms that we may redefine. And if I had the budget for amazing Proco-like animations, I would animate this bending and twisting and turning of volume and make it sensational with little speed lines that hold it together by rhythm. But I'm here in person, and talking is cheaper than animating. You can just imagine. Its purpose of this story of the blocked human form, is it to teach you how to draw like Bridgman? No. Is it to teach you how to draw like any master? No. Its purpose is to awaken the sense of research and analysis of the structure hidden beneath. Yes, the purpose of the story of this blocked human form is to awaken your awareness and understanding of its structure, its hidden structure. Why? He finishes off with why. It is hoped that the ideas conveyed in the drawing and text of this book may enable the reader to carry on to independent and better ideas. Well, let's pop out two important words here. Better. Yep, we're here to get better. Independent. It means we don't want to draw like George Bridgman. Or if we do, that's not the purpose he proposes. Independent means the audacity to make up our own figures out of our own choices. Blocks, eggs, cylinders, spheres, cones. To create our own independent and better ideas for bodies. Better than what? Better than George Bridgman's ideas. Tall order. And yet, you may rise to it. The purpose of Bridgman? To individualize. The purpose of Bridgman? To invent inventively, better than George. Permission to be more you. You may or may not go this quirky, or you may outdo Rimmer for quirk. But we're studying Bridgman. Now, regarding Howard Simon's comment, here's what I think he means by saying that Bridgman does not personalize or individualize. He means that we don't go to Bridgman to find individual characters with personal looks that vary from character to character. They're all pretty much the same type. He does the same character over and over. They are not individuals with story-worthy personalities. It's the style, the treatment that is personal and individual.
And we can learn from that. The firewood forms, the hatchet-carved chunks, the charcoal line grit.
Not like others. So Bridgman.
You can do likewise.
Okay, that was why Bridgman. Now, let's talk about the books. I told you about these complete guides. These are compilations, not of all the drawings of the smaller books, but of most of them. There are 2 smaller books. Look at the dates. A 19-year span there. His first book to his almost last book. He did a drapery book after that, then he died. His first book came out at the age of 55. That's an old man. It should give you some hope if you're old. Here's the array. Don't bother with the draped figure one. I mean, if you really love Bridgman's drawing so much, you have to have everything, but you're not going to learn much in there, and most of what's in there is in the complete guide. I think this one is the best. It isn't that the other ones don't have some of his best drawings. They do. But you know how sometimes in a career people get on a roll? I think he was on a roll in 1924. He hit stride. If you're only going to buy one of the smaller books, that's the one I recommend. But all of these have good stuff in them. More than the complete guides. And these 2 are popular. Constructive Anatomy, The Human Machine, Bridgman's Life Drawing, Dover Publications, the publisher I've paid more money to in my life than doctors. And Sterling Publications' 5th edition of the Complete Guide is, as of 2020, the best collection so far. All right, that's the books. What I'm going to do in the next half hour with you is going to be a little painful. I thought I shouldn't put them through it, and I thought, no, this is a boot camp. They signed up having read about a promise of pain. Are you going to disappoint them? This will be about a half hour of pain. It'll get fun later, and you're going to have to pay close attention and draw along, or you won't experience the pain. In my 20s, one of my colleagues told me, "You should draw through Bridgman. Why haven't you drawn through Bridgman?" He almost hit me. Well, I'm going to take you through pages right there toward the beginning and show you why I never succeeded in drawing through Bridgman and why I grew old faster than you will. This is going to help you, but you're going to hear the voice of my young days as a griper. It starts with a section called How to Draw the Figure. The first thing he says, before you make a line, you must have a clear conception of what you want to draw. Wow. What if I don't have a clear conception? He says, before you make a line, you must have a clear conception of what you want to draw. Well, let's go ahead and put it out there. Bridgman apparently knew before he started this demo that that is a conception in his mind of what he wants to draw. Let's put the whole paragraph up there. If you become impatient with my step-by-step 20 minutes plus that we're going to spend on this, you will have that image in front of you and you can draw to your heart's content. I want to read what he says, though. Before you make a line, you must have a clear conception of what you draw. In your mind, it is necessary to have an idea of what the figure to be drawn is doing. Study the model from different angles, since the nature and condition of the action or inaction. Oh, that's going to be a big theme, the action and inaction. This conception is the real beginning of your drawing. Well, I'd better chime in here. In case you think that this is gospel truth, William Steig liked to not know what he was going to draw and find it as he moved his line around, at least in his personal work when he wasn't illustrating. Some very good artists do that. There's an argument to be made, at least in your exercise, to not have a clear conception of what you want to draw. To go in not knowing what to expect, to stab and look and see what you hit, to improvise, which means no planning. There is an argument to be made that the best way to draw is to just let your hand go faster than your brain. I learned to do that, and some good came out of it, and you'll do some exercises to strengthen your skill at jumping in and making decisions in response to what just happened. There's more than one side to this argument. However, Bridgman's side is before you make a line, you must have a clear conception of what you want to draw. Nino, if you'd like to agree with Bridgman, but you just can't, you don't have to agree. Yeah, you do. You have to agree at some point that this is something that great artists do, and great artists do the other thing. There's two truths here. Maybe I should tell you, I had a student in the 90s named Blake. He was amazing. I wish I could show you. He took anatomy from me, and he got better after each lecture, better than me as his teacher. He did these battle axe characters, and he applied every lesson in anatomy. He applied it to these characters in single line strokes. And I was so impressed that he let me borrow some of his drawings to show my colleagues, and I showed two of my older colleagues. And they both said the same words came out of their mouth. They went, "Oh, he sees it before he puts it down." He sees it before he puts it down. They could tell as experienced artists, this guy sees it, puts it down in an effortless stroke. Now, Blake had no desire to be an artist, which made some other students want to kill him. And I hope that's not why I never heard from him after one semester. Have an idea what you want to draw. Now, it's over there on the right, and he's going to take us through it. And here's what he tells us to do first. Give due consideration to the placing of your drawing on the paper for balance and arrangement. Make 2 marks to indicate the length of the drawing. Now, this piece of paper right here in these rough lines that is about the size of your fingernail in the book, I've enlarged so that you can see it really clearly here. What he's saying is that give an idea on your paper of how much space it should take up. Here we have another bad habit that can happen. How many artists do you know, particularly beginners, who say, "I keep going off of the page"? If you keep going off of the page, there's a good chance you didn't have a clear conception, nor did you give due consideration to the placing of your drawing on the paper for balance and arrangement. Nor did you make 2 marks or 4 marks for where it will fit in. You say, well, does that mean you can't be a good artist? No, it does not mean that. You can be a great artist and go off the page. There are some great artists who drink too much alcohol and don't treat their friends well. Those may be more serious mistakes than going off the page. You can always tape some other paper to it. But George is telling you, if you want to be well trained by me, do a little planning for where you're going to build your building so that it doesn't go into the neighbor's yard or into the river. Okay, that's why you put a mark here and a mark here. You can do that on your paper and say, that's how tall I want this figure to be. Block in with straight lines the outline of the head. Turn it carefully on the neck, marking its center by drawing a line from the Adam's apple to the pit between the collarbones. Now, I'm going to let you do that, and I'm going to be silent, and then I'm going to talk about that advice. I confess to you, I'm a whiner. And when I did this, turn it carefully on the neck, did he mean the head? I assume he meant the head, marking its center. What, the head center? By drawing a line from the Adam's apple, that's on the neck, to the pit between the collar. How do I know if there's no collarbone up here? How do I know where the pit between the collarbones is? I don't think that's helpful advice when you have no idea where the proportions of those things are. And then there are other people, including Nicolaides, who said, don't start with the neck and head. When you have somebody saying, block in with straight lines, the outline of the head, and another teacher at the same school saying that if you're going to get the gesture, you don't start with somebody's head unless they're hanging by the neck. You have to sometimes choose between the two sides, and I'm inclined toward Nicolaides because he has a good reason for it, but let's hold off on that. Bridgman is starting with the head and neck here. What's he say next? From the pit of the neck, make one line giving the direction of the shoulders, keeping in mind the marking of its center, that must be right here, which should be the pit between the collarbones. Oh, okay, I guess that's there. As if you know how to do that and keep it in proportion. You notice something, folks? Look at this. Look at how wide those shoulders are. And then look over there. Yeah, that just drove me crazy as a student. When I was in my 20s trying to draw through this, they don't match. Let's keep going. He then tells you to indicate the general direction of the body by outlining to the hip and thigh at its outermost point the side that carries the weight. Now, as if I know the side that carries a weight, how do I know? I think this side carries the weight because it's lower and weight brings things down. Actually, no. The side that carries the weight is the side that's higher. But how would you know that it wasn't the other side until you've learned it? Okay, we know this is the side that carries a weight because Marshall told you, if not George. And we want to indicate the general direction of the body we're imagining by outlining to the hip and thigh at its outermost point. Okay, let's keep moving. Follow this by... Follow what? Oh, do this later. Do this afterward. Follow this. The next thing to do is outline the opposite inactive side. Well, if this is the one that carries the weight, this must be the inactive side of the body. Comparing the width with the head. Comparing the width of what? Comparing the width of the body? Where? Here? I'm confused. But I'll go ahead and just copy his line. Then, crossing again to the action side. I guess this is the action side because I was over here, so that's the action side. Drop a line to the foot. You have now determined the balance or equilibrium of the figure. Have I? Carry the line of the inert side to the knee, over and upward to the middle of the figure. The inert side of that was over and upward to the middle of the figure. On the outer side, I already dropped a line to the foot. What? Which outer side? I guess over here. That outer side. Okay, drop a line to the foot. Starting again with the head. Okay, back up here. And thinking of it as a cube with front, sides, top, back, and base, draw it on a level with the eye, foreshorten it in perspective. Well, too bad. The drawing does not tell me anything about that. If it makes any sense to you, put your lines down. There is more. We've got 4 more drawings before we get to that finished figure. So far, all I've got is outlines, except this was supposed to be a full-on cube with front, sides, top, back, and base, which, knowing what I know now, means this. And a head isn't a cube. we'll find that the eye level line will go there. The nose will stick out there. That will crunch into that. The face will be a little narrower there. We'll see underneath the chin, and we'll see underneath the chin as a plane under there. The jaw will come up there. The ears will go there. There'll be a little hard shadow there of that cheekbone. The mouth will go around a cylinder there, and so on. That's where he's going with this. But folks, that is not what we are going to learn from this how to draw the figure thing, because it never shows that in this book. What's next? Outline the neck. From the pit of the neck, draw a line down the center of the chest. Well, I think of this as the chest. And I do not see any line down the center of the chest. I see a line down the center of what my parents used to call the stomach, the belly, the abdomen. So I guess that's what he meant. But how? What he's saying is that if you were to think of this chest, let me do this a little closer to this. If you were to think of that thorax, that rib cage, as something that we're looking up at, and we would see below the egg there like that. That's what that line is. That's wrapping around form. And then the center line would wrap this way. And then we'd know that we're going to see more of this side of the egg, and we won't see any of the other side of the egg. And then that head over there, which will make this big, that one we're also looking up at. And it also has a center line, but now it's facing up that way. And now we've got something three-dimensional. That's what he's getting at. But if you had not paid all this money for this class, and you were going through this book for the first time like I was in my 20s, by this time you would say, I don't understand drawing. At a right angle to this line, what happened to the line? It disappeared. At a right angle to this line where stomach and chest join, draw another line and then draw another line. Okay, and then draw lines to indicate the rib cage as a block. I'm not seeing the rib cage as a block. If I were, I would be seeing something in a position like this, which would be analogous to that egg that I drew, where I look up at the egg. And so this line that's straight, and they're supposed to be straight, and that line that's straight, if I smooth them out, they'll go this way. And this line which goes straight up and that one which goes back, if I smooth it out, it does something similar, you see. That's what he's getting at when he says, draw another line and then draw lines to indicate the rib cage as a block. Well, until you already know how to do that, you can't do that. Twisted, tilted, or straight according to its position. And I add in, I am so sorry to set a bad example for you, but this sums up why, when I was in my 20s, I could not draw through Bridgman's book. I gave this so much time, and then I gave it again time in my 30s, and I gave it again time in my 40s. And the last time I have given it is now that I'm an old man. I'm giving it to you to show you why this book, without a teacher, can do what it does to your brain. I'm going to finish with this. This is the last one before he goes to the finish. Now, draw the thigh and the leg which support the greatest part of the weight of the body. We decided that that was over here. Making the thigh round. The thigh round? I always thought of round as something like that. It don't look round. The knee square. The knee square, I suppose there's a square in there. I kind of like to make it more clear. The calf of the leg triangular. I guess if I stretch my imagination, I can find a triangle in there, but it's a stretch. I have to stretch my imagination to the point of blind faith that I can look at it and call it. Okay, the ankle square. Okay, enough. I apologize. I told you I was going to put you through pain. I'm done. You get the point. Bridgman is to me one of the most impressive human figure drawers I know. And if he wrote this, though I suspect he didn't, it's some of the worst explanation I've ever seen, at least when it's accompanied by these pictures and when it's given to a person who is not yet already trained in how to draw the figure. Lack of context in these explanations is why I never learned from reading the book. Okay, here's my response. Really? And in case you're wondering, the book is filled with that kind of difficulty. It's why I recommend that you look at these pictures, read if you do not mind translating early 20th century academic style explanations. But now we need to turn it positive. We're going to turn it positive here. We're going to see if we can get some useful ideas out of what he summed it up with. This is how he sums up. There's some useful stuff here. I've read this over and over, and I'm going to boil it down to the 3 things that you should get from this meeting. Few simple lines. That's principle number 1, simplicity. If you want to learn to draw the figure, if you want to learn to draw anything, how simple can you begin? Don't make it overcomplicated. I think many of us have that tendency because you know how complicated it is. So the first thing is simplicity. Within that simplicity, what do we have? We have proportion, active and inactive sides. That's 2 opposite ways of looking at the sides of a figure as active and inactive. So proportion, active and inactive sides. And then he shows 3 other things in there: balance, unity, and rhythm. We're going to get to those. We're going to get to those next week. They mean a lot. What's the second thing? Bear in mind that the chest, head, chest, and pelvis are the 3 large masses. That's the next principle. A human body is, at its most simple, at its most basic for understanding it, 3 large masses. What are they? They are the head. We'll get to that tomorrow. The thorax. We'll get to that tomorrow. The pelvic block. We'll get to that tomorrow. We cannot make it simpler than that. If we fuse either of those together, it becomes a plastic G.I. Joe model, a non-articulating figure. If we fuse them together, there's no sense of movement that can change. As soon as something moves, they bend and twist and shift their positions to each other. And that's what he says. These masses bend and turn and twist, and that gives action. What's the secret to that? Well, one big secret is 3 masses. And he also says, think of them as blocks. Well, that doesn't seem human. It may not seem human, but it is the most useful form concept that you will have for drawing anything, actually. And you'll find out why in a few days. That's the second thing. Now, here's the third thing. Whenever these 3 masses, whatever positions they assume, no matter how violently they may be drawn together on their active side, pulled apart on their inactive side, there is a corresponding gentleness of line on the imposing inert side and a subtle, elusive, living harmony throwing through the whole figure, which is the rhythm of the figure. Now, what he's saying is that when one part goes this way and another part that goes another way. That is the subtle, elusive, living harmony that flows through the whole rhythm of the figure. That there's something about the position of these things and the way these lines go that makes it beautiful. The aesthetic side of it. Now, if you feel a little bothered by these three things that I boiled it down to, first of all, that is what he boils it down to. The first thing is keep it simple. The second thing is three masses. The third thing is that the way we arrange those three masses gives it an aesthetic quality, a feeling. Now, let's pull up high over the subject and see what one of our favorite authorities had to say about drawing. We get the opening to drawing lessons from the great masters, Robert Beverly Hale, who says, drawing, like so many other skills, is a matter of being able to think of several things at once. Since the conscious mind seems to be able to think about only one thing at a time, the subconscious mind must take care of a good deal when we draw. So, the process of learning to draw demands that we acquaint the subconscious mind with a certain amount of material, so that the subconscious can largely take over the control of our hand. Look at that quote. I'm going to take a phrase out of it. Certain amount of material. Robert Beverly Hale says that in order to learn to draw, we acquaint our subconscious mind with a certain amount of material. Here's where it gets tough. What is that certain amount of material? 1, anatomy. We've been talking a little about that. Bridgman's book certainly has a lot to do with anatomy. Anatomy is not enough. A surgeon knows anatomy really well. But that doesn't mean they can draw. Form is another thing that an artist learns. How it occupies space, not just what it's made out of. How about what else? What else is there? Proportion. That is, a surgeon isn't that concerned with proportion. But if we're going to draw a figure and we make something way too big or way too small and we don't want it to be that way, it means we've got to study proportion until we get it assimilated. What else? Rendering. Oh gosh, what's that mean? It means what people call shading. We're going to deal with one. We've got one session on light and shade, and it's going to be very rudimentary, but it'll be useful. Hey, if we're going to put shade in our drawing and not just do Shel Silverstein kind of cartoons, we might want to know the principles of rendering. I even have a maxim that I tell beginners: don't shade until you learn how, because I spent a couple decades of wasting my time pouring myself into shading and getting into terrible habits because I just didn't know how light fell on form. Technique. Bridgman works with charcoal. You may not. You might work with pen and ink. You may work with other media. Technique is how you put down the medium. That's a whole other thing. Gesture. What's that? Oh gosh, let's not open up that can of worms. We'll talk about it in here quite a few times. But it can be gesture of technique that I make my lines flow, but they are just doodles. Or it could be gesture of the figure that I've got really awkward lines, but the figure still looks like it's alive and in motion. Two kinds of gesture. Gosh, that's getting complicated. Design, graphic. Well, Bridgman's got a lot of stuff about how lines curve this way and lines curve another way, and it creates a graphic design. But what about another kind of design? Graphic design doesn't have anything to do with character design. If you're inventing figures, you may be inventing figures for stories. And if you're inventing figures for stories, you care about what they wear. We call that costume design, even if it's a person just wearing jeans and t-shirt. Professional costume designers look at it as a costume. We care about body type if we're designing characters. We care about age. We care about gender. Just the word gender as a certain amount of material for character design is a topic that the closer we get to it, the more we see that it's more complex than that simplicity. Ethnicity, same thing that happens with that. Composition. Well, gosh, composition is the most important thing about picture making in a lot of people's opinions. Color. We aren't going to deal with color in this class. Making a living. You know, if you were to master all of the things up there, doesn't mean that you'll make a living. Mastering this figure drawing business does not mean that you have a career. It's a whole separate thing. Now, why did I do this? To let you know that this certain amount of material that Robert Beverly Hale is talking about is what you do over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, presumably to make a living, but maybe not. Maybe you just take that out and say, I just have images in me that I want to do great while I make my living delivering the mail. Now, I'm going to take 3 drawings from Bridgman. Watch this. We are spending pretty much the whole session on this figure, but I'm going to try to extract every lesson out of it I can. Get a nice, clean, fresh piece of paper to invest the next half hour in. There's no drawing assignment between today and tomorrow. Your only assignment between today and tomorrow is to collect your favorite drawings. It's hard for me to collect my favorite drawings out of Bridgman's book, because I love so many. And so I've got about 100 favorite drawings. But these 3 are certainly 3 of my favorite drawings. And that's why I'm going to take some time with them. This is the first demo. This is the first drawing that he does after that How to Draw a Figure in the complete guide, or at least the old complete guide. Now, when you look at this, when you look at an outline like this and an outline like this, there's one thing we know about those outlines, and that is that they are reductions. If this were a life drawing class, you would not see lines like this on the figure. You would make them up. Why? So that the lines on the paper will offer some good thing that the model can't give us, at least not as well. But the model is gorgeous. The model is a marvelous human. How can we compete? Exactly. A human model, if you take the time to look, really look, offers all sorts of interesting things that the drawing can't offer. So, what can a drawing offer that's better than life? Well, let's do something here. Let's put a whole bunch of pixie sticks just all randomly placed, and they look randomly placed. Now let's do some pixie sticks that are all lined up. Not randomly, but they look ordered. We could make them perfect, and then no one pixie stick stands out because they're predictable. They're not that complex. But as soon as one stands up taller or has a curve to it, it becomes very important in the design. If it changes its angle, or if it wiggles, if it separates from the others, if it does anything different, it becomes interesting. One principle of design, composition, is to change up a few things and make them surprising. Straight lines and curved lines, for example. Straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, curved line, curved line, opposite curved line, curved line, opposite curved line, straight line, straight line. They balance each other and they enrich a design. Also, open lines. They break open so water can get through. and clotheslines where you can't get through, just like when you design your room, your bathroom, your house. You have places you can get in and places you can't get through. Thick lines and thin lines, jagged lines and smooth lines. And here is the big deal with Bridgman that he emphasized himself. Let's remind ourselves, what did he make a big deal out of? He made a big deal out of one side scrunched up and one side stretched out. So let's see how he does that. Sure enough, this side, flesh presses together, this side stretches out. At least on that torso. Does he do it other places too? Well, you might not have given that much attention to the fact that right now some parts of you are stretched out. If you just feel your body right now, take a moment, like in a yoga class, to pay attention to your body. I guess the drill sergeant wouldn't say, listen to your body. The drill sergeant would say, just do it. Don't listen to your body. Yoga teacher will say, listen to it. When you take a position like sitting that feels normal, as soon as you start to train for sports or do yoga, you become aware of which parts are extending and which parts are flexing. By the way, those are technical terms. Technical terms. Look at this. This part is extending. It's getting longer. This part is flexing. It's coming together to become shorter on that side. When this rib cage, which is made of hard parts, when that rib cage goes up this way and that hip goes down that way, this skin stretches. When that rib cage presses down this way and that hip goes up, this squashes. Bridgman makes a big deal out of that. Of course, you might not be able to do that if you don't know about those bones underneath there. Because those bones, those three masses he talked about, those are what's making that happen. It's hidden down in there. Forget about the fact that this leg covers it up. It's stretching out and crunching in. It's not just doing it left to right. I want to show you something that's hard to get, but I'm going to try to explain it. Can you tell that this part of the knee is closer to us than this part where it goes into the pelvic block? That is, that knee is a little closer to us. It's a form. Well, if that's the case and it's going away, there's a good chance that if this part is straight up and down, that there would be a bit of a pinch in there. And so we've got on the front of this body something that flexes, something that crunches. And if we were to look at it from behind, we would see that that rear end, that gluteus maximus, that is going to make that upper leg and go down into that knee and turn down into that calf and then go down into that heel and then down into that foot. Sorry for the wobbly lines. That upper leg there, that buttock. Watch this. This is going away from us up that way. That is going away from us down that way. And this, watch my blue line, this stretches. Over here it squashes, not just on a flat graphic design way, but in a three-dimensional coming toward us and going away from us way. Look how he does it up here at the neck. Look at how this guy's neck is stretched out there. If you put your neck in that position, you'll feel it. That's a stretch. And it makes sense that on the other side, you're going to have flesh crunching together over on that side. You might get an extra fold of skin or 3. Now, this crunching up and stretching out, every week I will mention it. Probably. If I fail to, you can say, Marshall, you never reminded us in this session how flesh squashes together. And I'll say, thank you, and I'll remind you, because he mentions it constantly. Back to this figure. Say, is he really considering? Watch some of the other things. Do you see how this line curves that way? Why does that line curve that way? Because this upper leg is coming toward us, and so we put a rubber band around it like that. But then that lower leg is going away from us, and so he's going to remind us that instead of putting a stripe around there, he puts an arc like that. And that arc tells us that the lower leg is going away from us. My golly, it's 3-dimensional. But he's not just making a point about the lower leg going away from us. He's saying, by the way, it arcs this way. I like it when arcs change because that gives it a rhythm. And then he tells us that that leg is actually coming toward us a little bit before it turns into a foot. Watch this foot. That foot is convex. My goodness, that's really going to come toward us. And then we'll do an ankle in there. You say, is he really thinking about all of that when he draws? And the answer is yes. That's what his student, Robert Beverly Hale, who was Bridgman's student, Hale studied with Bridgman, that's what he was talking about. This is to show that an artist who's got their act together, when they invent a figure, they think about graphic design. They think about I'm going to do a really big marker here to make this impressive. They think about thisness and thatness, about toward us and away from us. They think about crunched and open, and then change it. This side was crunched. On the same side, it'll be stretched. This side was stretched. On the same side, it will be crunched. The back and forthness of rhythm is a big part of what Bridgman is teaching, and his colleague Kimmo Nicolaides turns this into hours-long exercises. We'll get to them next week. I'll introduce you to some of those where you just make it this way and that way and this way and that way, even just with abstract lines, so you get in the habit of it. Now look at this one. You can hardly find any straight lines on this. This has got curves all over the place, except when you sensitize your eye, you say there sure is a straight line in there. When you sensitize your eye, you'll say there sure are a couple of straight lines in there. Bridgman said to start with straight lines. It helps you get proportions accurately. Tomorrow, we take the straight line thing up with earnest seriousness. But this one, he's shifting gears. I don't want it to feel like a graphic design. I want it to feel like a fleshy, huggable, grippable body, which means it's got to be made out of flesh. And what do we got? Look what we've got. We're going to at some point say that we need to know some anatomy, because what he does right there, he will do this over and over when we get to wedging. He's going to show how there's a muscle that comes out of there that if we put lines on top of it would go like this. It's the rectus femoris, and it comes out of a kind of boxy shape there, and then it melds together with a couple of other muscles, including a little strip of ribbon that was going to go down into there, and we're going to have it meld into some quadriceps, and there's going to be an adductor goes there. We're going to learn those muscles. But you see, that right there, it's got a bulge because it's lifting this knee up and making the squash and stretch. Oh, look what else you learned from this one. This is a whole other lesson. When you go straight and simple and analytical, what do you lose? You lose technique of gesture. Or I should say, gesture of technique. Bridgman is showing us, watch this line, watch this line. This line goes down like that and makes a little curly cue and goes like that and makes a little core shadow and goes like that and then makes a little part that tucks in there and goes like that. And it's all in a single stroke that's like when you're a little kid and you just have a fun skating on the page so that you get an expressive line. But I can't do that and make it look right. Yeah, that's why it takes time. But it's a separate discipline. I'm looking at the chat. I had no idea there was so much in such a simple drawing. Thisness and thatness, so good. The first drawing looks like the hips are rotated more. Yeah, Caleb, he changes position. He changes things. Well, look at the leg. Look at the leg. Why did he change from this angle to this angle? Because he chose to. But it's inconsistent. Bridgman didn't seem to care. Is it more practice to try to recreate with construction lines or without? You do both. Hey, whenever you say, should I do one thing as opposed to the other? Don't say that. How about one thing and the other? What's better, my left side or my right side? Well, if you're like most people, one side is going to be stronger than the other. One eye is going to have a little better vision than the other. One leg is going to be better to kick with than the other. Oh, okay, then I should chop off my other leg, right? Yes. Let's move on to homework. Open up a folder. Make a collection of what I call bodies worth knowing. This includes athletes. This includes dancers. This includes pole vaulters and swimmers and basketball players. It can also include people in full uniform where you can't see the body parts. Because when you see football players and they look like robots, there's actually an advantage to that. Those exaggerated shoulder pads are a little analogous to what happens with a shoulder girdle, where it wraps around the top form and makes the shoulders stick out. Clothed and unclothed. Stills from Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dancing. You see, if you can't see the anatomy in there, but you can look through the clothes and see the landmark points, which we'll start talking about later. Can't teach it all in one session here. What we're trying to do today, what we did today is we saw that Bridgman's book is difficult. But the drawings are great. And you're in this class. So you're going to understand them one day at a time. You're going to understand more about them. And you want to work from stuff that you like, stuff you admire. Choose your favorite Bridgman drawings. If I was going to warn you away against any drawings, the last kind of drawings you'd want to use for this class are overly rendered life drawings where all of the details are in there. Because everyone does that anyway. You ever notice that when people start to learn figure drawing, I did this for 4 semesters. I took 4 semesters of life drawing and I didn't learn a single thing about how to invent a figure out of my imagination. Not one single thing, with 2 years of doing homework and devoting myself and putting hundreds of hours into rendering. Rendering where I didn't even understand what was going on with the light. How I wish I could do it over. And in this class, since this is the antidote for that spending 30 hours on a drawing, you would never spend more than an hour on a drawing in this course, because you want to do them from all angles to remember what they look like and understand the mechanics, the components, and then have the audacity to stretch and thicken and change and make the pose more exaggerated and so on. So what we learned today is that that's difficult. It takes a lot of things to learn how to do that. And what we want to see is, what are some of those things? One is that the graphic design of it, Bridgman thinks about. Another is that the squash and stretch of it is something Bridgman thinks about. And then look over here on the right. And if you know anatomy, anatomy. Bridgman is so aware of that sartorius and that it is separating a quadriceps group. Watch this next line. Watch this next line. It's also separating an adductor group, which on horses is the size of your whole torso. He is aware of a deltoid and a pectoralis and how they kind of blend together, and that there's he's aware of that ridge group. There's a bicep up there. There's a medial epicondyle there. There's the ridge group. There's the flexor group. He is aware of every nuance of muscle in there, and part of what makes him great, this might be an advanced lesson, part of what makes him great is that he knows it so well, he almost throws it away. He almost acts like, oh no, it's nothing. I just happened to throw that line down, so it happened to luckily land where it did. It's just gorgeous, authoritative understanding. But I got to turn you on to this guy, Emilio Rizzo. He has these on YouTube where he flips through his sketchbooks. You know, if I were going to associate Bridgman with music, I would certainly associate him with Beethoven. He reminds me of Beethoven. Emilio thumbs through his sketchbook to Chopin, which is not something I would have guessed, but it's just beautiful. Chopin is so different from Chopin's is wooing and soothing and lovely, and Bridgman is muscular and strong and like a dominance display, and you just put the two of them together. They worked out beautifully. There's someone who's going through their sketchbook and working from Bridgman. Do whatever you like, but the homework for tonight is to go through the books or the book and thumbnail or put a Post-it note or whatever your favorite drawing. This to me is a glorious drawing. This to me, that leg and that rear end alone, with its strength and the way that giant quadricep group comes out of there and it's round and that knee becomes so hard, chiseled like rock, and that outer hamstring coming around from the back turns into something like a shotgun as it aims toward us, and it grips that calf. And then that knee, which is several parts, including going down into the nose of the tibia, gets swallowed up by that extensor group and that tibialis anterior that goes over there. It's just a great example of strong figure drawing, and every line has meaning. Just look at that rib cage. Look at how it's got a front plane and a side plane, and that is an example of, even though the rib cage is not a block, he is thinking of the rib cage as a block so that he can go in there and shade it with a hard plane break and then cut down into it a little bit like that so that you get some shade there too. And that's part of what makes this look so chiseled and strong. Look at that foot. Look at how this side, the extra flesh crunches up. This side, he opens up the line. Little water can get through there. That's what you do with animal fur too. There is so much in here, but in your first attempts, you may not understand them. So the job tonight is not to draw. The job is to collect the ones you say, I would love to do stuff like that. And then tomorrow we begin studying. This was an overview of the course and mockingly how to draw the figure, not. Tomorrow we talk about proportions and shapes. And then we're going to find out that straight lines and simple shapes become useful later in inventing. And then on Saturday, We will begin turning those shapes into forms. And that's where we start to move into advanced lessons. In 3 days, that's a boot camp. We're going to go from just an overview of how difficult it is to very flat design stuff to thickening it, in 3 days. And then next week, we'll start talking more about that graphic design stuff, poses and gesture and balance and rhythm. And we'll talk again about getting all these things to work together and then twisting them into 3D rhythms and metaphors from nature is one of the creative lessons of this course. That Bridgman uses metaphor from nature. Find out that the body is like rock. The body is like a lily. The body is like a fire. The body is like water. The body is like a limp biscuit. All sorts of things that we can choose that the body is like. And Bridgman gets a lot of strength from rocks and flames. Wedging and passing and locking. Now we're going to start to make it more organic and assembling it. Light and shade, distribution of the masses, neck and head structure, bones as forms. Here's where we get into the real anatomy. All the anatomy pretty much happens in there. Now, I'm giving you this as a quick overview of the course because that's what we were supposed to do, is give you an overview of the course. Sorry I went through it so fast. It's okay. If I went through it fast, at least you'll be here. It's 2 o'clock. We're officially done. What's your homework? Collect your favorite drawings. If you spend, let's see, it's Thursday. If you spend 1 to 3 hours tonight, not on drawing, but on collecting. If you spend 5 or 6 hours on collecting, great. But you are preparing your collection of bodies worth knowing. Different angles, different types. Relaxed and in tremendous tension. Posing for the camera and not knowing there's a camera there because they're just trying to survive. All of those things that will keep you busy because you want to study them. And we will each day take just a few of the Bridgman drawings. I am going to use a fraction of the drawings in this class. You will use all you want if you have purchased the book. Okay, we are officially done. Now I need to tell you a couple things. What's the difference between a participant and an observer homework? No difference. Let's go back to this. One thing you might want to do is not do this alone. Get together with people and say, what are you going to do? Here's what I'm going to do. And then when you get around each other, you get ideas. Kids, when they get around each other, do not need grown-ups to tell them what to do. We want to build a tree fort. We want to go see if we can catch a bear in the forest. We want to light the neighbor's house on fire. Sometimes the grown-up has to step in. And what I'm pointing you towards, so that I don't even need to be there, is that just play. Collect the stuff you like the most. And then when you share it with your friends, somebody might say, you know, that stuff is really overly rendered. Are you sure you want to use that? And then your community of people become your mentors, your fellow travelers. You don't need a teacher if you've got just a little bit aiming you toward teaching each other. Now, that's the difference between observer and participant. Frederick, photos or drawings or paintings, but Bridgman primarily. You're asking a question, Frederick, that's going to take you away. What difference does it make whether they're photos or drawings or paintings? Here's the thing. This is a Bridgman course. Why not? Put your energy tonight in every favorite Bridgman. And then in the coming weeks, there's going to be other bodies say, I don't want to leave that one out of my bodies worth knowing. Okay. See you tomorrow at noon. And for some of you, in less than an hour. That was session 1, the intro from our 12-session summer boot camp in 2020. If you want more videos, live sessions, and updates on other offerings, subscribe to my announcement list at marshallart.com.